She wanted my forgiveness without regret. But I wanted justice without a sound. When I closed the Dian, what I heard beyond changed everything, Gore. She kept knocking still. I'll keep this post straightforward. No fancy formatting, no breaks, no edits, just the truth. The kind of story I wish I could have read years ago when I was quietly drowning in responsibility and no one saw it. My parents split up when I was 6, and the way they handled custody afterward shaped everything that followed. My dad took on most of the structure, finances, school schedules, pickups and drop-offs, and making sure our lives ran like clockwork. When I was with him, things felt predictable. We did homework together, went grocery shopping, practiced sports, did laundry, cooked meals, ate, and cleaned up, quietly, efficiently, without speeches or guilt trips. My mom, on the other hand, said the divorce had shattered her because my dad had cheated. She told everyone she needed to find herself again, that she deserved to live her life and not sit home alone. When I stayed with her, she'd leave most evenings to go out with friends, and I'd be left with my 4-year-old brother. I'd go over his needs for the next day, swap laundry loads, prep food, pack backpacks, and lay out clothes. By the time I was 14, I didn't need anyone to tell me what to do, I just did it, because no one else would. My brother was 10 by then, still needing rides, signatures on school forms, lunch money, clean clothes, and someone to make sure he didn't stay up all night. Mom would text from the bar saying she'd be home soon, then again an hour later, and then nothing. Eventually, I stopped waiting. Staying awake for her meant no sleep, then dragging myself through school, exhausted and foggy. So I built routines, set alarms, tracked buses, memorized phone numbers, wrote down due dates and locker combinations, and managed our tiny world so it wouldn't fall apart. Dad never badmouthed her. He never pulled me into adult conversations or asked for details. I kept most of it to myself because if he tried to take her to court again, I knew it would mean more fights, more custody exchanges, more chaos. I couldn't handle that. I wanted stability, even if it meant silence. He paid child support, showed up, and always asked if we were doing okay. And I always said yes, because saying we're fine kept the peace and let me stay in control of my fragile system. If people wonder where the rest of the adults were, the answer is around but useless. The custody agreement said what it said. Mom claimed she was managing things, and I was the one actually managing them. No one wanted to pull the thread that might unravel what little stability I'd built. I tracked grocery prices, learned to stretch $1, memorized the sale flyers. I figured out meals that could be made fast but felt like real food. I discovered that keeping a pot of rice in the fridge meant I could throw together dinner after late practices without starting from scratch. None of this felt noble or tragic. It was just survival. I'm not writing this for pity or praise. It's just what happened. I did what had to be done to prevent the constant emergencies that seemed to follow my mother everywhere. I missed parties, games, and hangouts. Because if I went out, my brother would be home alone, and I knew exactly how that felt. I wasn't going to do that to him. When college came up senior year, I told my parents I couldn't go away. My brother still needed me. Dad offered to go back to court for more time, but I told him not to. I couldn't risk another drawn-out fight that might change nothing. So I stayed. I enrolled in community college, worked nearby, and kept our lives steady. When my brother got his driver's license and started staying mostly with Dad, I finally moved into a small apartment. I still carried habits from those years, planning everything, triple-checking, but for the first time I could breathe. I wasn't waiting for Mom to stumble through the door or calculating if we had enough for dinner. Fast forward to now, I'm pregnant. My partner and I planned a baby shower that included both sides of the family. I thought maybe we could keep things neutral. Just a few hours focused on baby gifts, food, and laughter. No drama. I told my best friend who was hosting that I didn't want speeches or microphone moments. Everything went fine for most of the event. My parents stayed on opposite sides of the room, which was ideal. But near the end, my mother started telling a group of relatives how she raised 2 kids alone after being abandoned by her cheating husband. She spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. Dad was in earshot but said nothing. I watched people nod, soaking in her story. And in that moment I realized, if I stayed quiet, her version would become the official one. The story of my childhood would erase every sleepless night, every grocery list, every late bus, every moment I held it all together. So I spoke up, calmly but clearly. I said that I raised myself and my brother when we lived with her, that Dad never abandoned us, that he paid support and stayed present. I said that if anyone wanted to know who actually handled meals, school forms, pickups, and doctor visits, they could ask me. I told them I wasn't going to let my child grow up hearing a lie that gave credit to someone who didn't do the work. Mom called me ungrateful and said I'd humiliated her. She stormed out with her friends. The next day, she texted that I'd crossed a boundary and that she wouldn't speak to me until I apologized. I didn't reply, because apologizing for telling the truth would undo years of progress. I wanted to focus on the baby and getting a real support system in place. I wrote up a post-delivery plan, scheduled visits, no surprise drop-ins, and no baby photos posted without our consent. Dad agreed instantly and asked if we needed anything. Mom stayed silent. A week before my due date, she asked to meet. At a cafe near her house, she said she'd thought about what happened. She admitted that she'd left us alone many nights, that she'd used bars and friends to avoid being alone. She said she'd been depressed and terrified of therapy because of money and shame. She asked for a chance to be a better grandmother, to rebuild trust. I told her I appreciated the honesty, but I wouldn't rewrite history. I said if she wanted a role in my life, it would depend on small, consistent actions over time. I made it clear I wouldn't be her emotional caretaker or therapist. If she wanted help, she needed professionals. I laid out clear visiting rules and said that if she broke them, we'd take a step back. She said she understood and cried. I didn't rush to comfort her. That was a reflex I'd broken. I wasn't her caretaker anymore. Later, Dad came by with a bag of supplies and asked how the talk went. I told him, and he admitted feeling ashamed at the shower. He said his affair set everything in motion, and that he regretted not fighting harder when he suspected we weren't safe at Mom's. He said he feared losing custody battles and making our lives worse. I told him I didn't want to rehash old choices. I needed him focused on what's in front of us. He nodded and told me to call him out if he ever overcompensates out of guilt. I appreciated that because guilt-driven help always ends up creating more work for me. The shower left relatives confused since they'd heard two different versions of our childhood for years. I told them I wasn't punishing Mom or excusing Dad. I just wanted honesty. I wanted my child to grow up on facts, not fairy tales of self-pity or blame. I told them I'm open to people who show up and closed to those who don't. And if anyone tries to push me into a forced forgiveness arc to make themselves feel better, they can stop right there. I'm done doing emotional labor for others. My brother called 2 days later. He said he froze during the shower and regretted not stepping in. That night, he'd texted Mom agreeing with me, reminding her that he remembered countless nights when I was the only adult around. He told her he wouldn't sit through any more stories that erased me. Then he asked for my postpartum rules so he could help enforce them if I was too exhausted to. I sent him the schedule, short visits, no photos without consent, and no posts. He said he'd back me up completely. Some cousins asked Mom for her side, and she told them she was done dealing with ungrateful kids. One cousin tried defending her, saying that divorce is hard and socializing is healthy. I said, sure, having friends is fine. Leaving 2 kids home alone repeatedly is not. End of discussion. Dad didn't call her or try to mediate. He stayed neutral, kept things practical, and didn't drag me into the middle, which honestly made everything smoother. In the week before the baby came, my husband and I finalized our plan. Scheduled visits, quiet days, and a list of useful tasks for visitors. We wanted help that actually helped, not people sitting around holding the baby while dishes piled up. We posted the plan on the fridge: meal drop-offs, bottle washing, trash runs, grocery pickups, quick errands. People who followed the plan were invited back. Those who didn't got fewer invitations, not as punishment but protection. After that cafe talk, Mom texted that she'd respect my boundaries: no guests, no speeches, no photos. I asked her to confirm she'd come and leave on time and ask before holding the baby. She agreed. I kept interactions brief, specific, and task-focused. No emotional detours. Then the baby arrived. Labor went smoothly, as much as labor ever does. We kept the hospital quiet and visitor-free. Dad came during visiting hours, held the baby, asked what we needed, then went home to prep our house. Mom came the next day. She brought a small bag of diapers and wipes, along with a handwritten note saying she wanted to do better. She asked to hold the baby. I said yes. She didn't bring up the past, didn't talk about Dad, didn't grab her phone. She just held her grandchild quietly. After 20 minutes, she said she'd go so I could rest. It was the first time in years I didn't feel like I had to manage her emotions or tiptoe around her moods. At home, we stuck to our system. Visitors came during scheduled windows and helped with specific chores. We even kept a chart on the fridge: feedings, diapers, meds, tasks, so when someone asked, What can I do? We could point instead of think. Mom came during her window, asked what needed doing, and I told her. Laundry, bottles, counters. She did exactly that. No unsolicited advice, no boundary pushing, no emotional monologues. She even set a timer to remind herself when to leave. I documented every good visit, not because I'm petty, but because I want to track behavior, not just hope. People keep asking if I'd go to therapy with my mom, or manage her mental health, or push her into treatment. The answer is no. I told her I'd send her the names of therapists and a link to an intake portal. That's it. That's the limit of my responsibility. She gets to decide if she wants help, but I'm no longer the one fixing, managing, or rescuing anyone. My focus is my baby, my husband, and a stable life built on truth, not performance. After my mother started therapy, I helped her locate a few counselors that were covered under her insurance. I told her to let me know once she'd actually scheduled an appointment, though she didn't have to share details if she preferred privacy. 2 weeks later, she texted that she'd completed her intake and attended her first session. She said it was hard to sit through the therapist's comments about her habits and self-narratives. Apparently, the therapist asked her to explain how she'd coped after the divorce and what impact it had on us. And that's when she realized she'd built a version of events in which she saw herself as our savior, even when the evidence said otherwise. I told her I heard her, and I'd pay attention to her actions, not her reflections. Then I set a clear rule about childcare. For now, only my dad, my brother, and 2 trusted friends are allowed to care for the baby without supervision. My mom can visit and help with chores while I'm present, and if she stays consistent for a few months, we can reassess later. She accepted that and asked if she could take the stroller out for a short walk while I joined. I agreed to 1 loop around the block together, and it went fine. She didn't push for more, which mattered, because if she had, it would have felt like the old cycle again. Then we discussed money. My mom offered to contribute financially, so I suggested a small monthly transfer into the baby's savings account instead of random shopping. I asked her not to buy unapproved items, since we prioritize space and systems over clutter. She agreed, made the transfer, and started bringing only practical consumables. During visits, she sometimes reads aloud from a book while I rest, small gestures that actually help more than the grand emotional ones. I value support that fits our plan, not dramatic declarations of love or guilt. As for my dad, I told him directly that I didn't want him grading my mom's behavior on a curve because of his guilt about the affair. I asked him not to frame her basic cooperation as remarkable progress or act like I owed anyone applause for following boundaries. He understood and promised to keep our conversations grounded in logistics. He also avoids direct communication with her, so I'm not caught in the middle. He focuses on practical help, errands, rides, minor home repairs, and notes his contributions on our household board before heading out. This structure keeps things clean, calm, and predictable. Some relatives have strong opinions about forgiveness. They keep telling me life's too short to hold grudges. I tell them I'm not in a forgiveness race. I'm running a household with a newborn and building peace one boundary at a time. People who help are welcome, people who bring chaos are not. I communicate rules clearly both in text and in person. If someone ignores them, I don't argue, I simply stop engaging. People either adapt or drift away. Either outcome is fine. The next challenge came during our baby's naming ceremony, hosted by my partner's family. Both of my parents were invited for a short portion of the gathering, with clear expectations. No speeches, no toasts to the past, no dramatics. My mom asked ahead of time if she could say a quick blessing. I told her plainly that we weren't doing open mics and that she could keep her words private. On the day itself, she arrived punctually, stayed toward the back, and quietly helped plate food instead of inserting herself into conversations with my in-laws. My dad came on time too, sat next to my brother, and minded his own business. Halfway through, one of my partner's relatives complimented both my parents for raising me so well. I felt the energy in the room shift, that familiar pause where everyone waits for the older generation to give a reflective speech. My mother opened her mouth to speak, and I looked at her and gently said, "We're keeping this about the baby." She stopped and sat back. My dad stayed silent. It may seem like a small moment, but for us, that was a major turning point, an old dynamic that tried to rise again but didn't win. A week later came another test. My mom showed up 15 minutes late to a scheduled visit and then asked to stay extra to make up for lost time. I told her no, end times matter because they align with naps, feedings, and my sanity. She explained that traffic had delayed her and asked for flexibility. I said that life always has traffic, and consistency is the rule. If she wanted more time, she'd have to demonstrate punctuality over several visits first. She accepted the boundary, left when her time was up, and didn't argue. I logged that as progress, because reliable follow-through means more than tearful promises. Some have asked whether I'll eventually let her rebuild a closer relationship. Honestly, I don't know. I don't base relationships on hope anymore, only on consistent, respectful behavior. To her credit, she's made small, visible improvements. She helps quietly, doesn't post photos, hasn't retold the shower story, keeps attending therapy, and avoids bringing up my father. I can recognize progress without lowering my guard. Meanwhile, my brother has fully embraced being an uncle, and seeing him thrive without the old burden of responsibility has been healing for both of us. He visits on weekends, runs errands, cooks big meals for the week, labels containers, and lets me rest while he cleans. I told him that watching him enjoy family time without the pressure of parenting someone else's mess is something I'll always remember. He said he feels the same, that for the first time, we're building family moments instead of surviving them. When people ask if I've accepted my mother's apology, my answer stays the same. Apologies don't matter unless behavior sustains them. I don't score points, but I do keep track of patterns, because without accountability, emotions just fog up reality. And I refuse to raise my child inside that fog again. Our home runs on structure, and anyone who wants a place in it has to respect that structure. That's the rule. 2 more months passed. My mother kept up her therapy sessions. She missed 2, but notified me about 1. The other, she didn't, so I postponed her next visit by a week. I reminded her that my time isn't an open slot people can cancel and refill at will. She didn't argue, she accepted it and showed up early for every following visit, sometimes waiting in her car until the start time. That small gesture meant a lot. During her visits, she stuck to chores unless I specifically asked her to handle the baby. Once, she adjusted the swaddle without permission. I told her to stop, and she did, no attitude, no excuses. Then came a tougher situation. We were at a family dinner, not at my house, when I overheard her telling someone that she'd done what she had to do to survive after being betrayed. I immediately walked over and said that topic was off limits. She tried to defend herself, saying she was just making conversation. I calmly told her that revisiting old history in social settings breaks our rules. Then I gathered my partner and the baby, said polite goodbyes to the host, and left. Later, I sent her a message explaining that her visits were paused for 2 weeks, and that another breach like that would reset her progress entirely. The next morning, she apologized and promised to stop bringing up the past. When the suspension ended, she returned on time and followed every rule. My dad continues to stay steady, no comparisons, no commentary, no requests for extra access. He hasn't tried to make up for his past with grand gestures that actually create more work for me. He does what's needed and moves on. Once, while I was feeding the baby, he began to apologize again for his affair. I told him I didn't have the energy for that discussion in that moment. He said no problem, and immediately started washing bottles instead. That was that. A few relatives still try to stage big family photos with both my parents together. I refuse every time. I take separate pictures, keep them private, and don't allow anyone else to post them. If people say they just want memories, I remind them my top priority is my child's peace, not their photo albums. I don't apologize, and I don't debate it. I've learned that the fewer words I use to explain my boundaries, the stronger they hold. Progress, for us, doesn't look like hugs and speeches. It looks like punctual arrivals, clean communication, no guilt trips, and respect for time limits. My mom's learning that structure is love, not control. My dad's learning that quiet reliability is more healing than endless regret. My brother and I are finally living like siblings, not co-parents. And I'm learning that peace isn't something you wait for. It's something you schedule, enforce, and protect. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to leave a comment. Hit subscribe, follow for more, and turn on the bell icon so you never miss the next one.